Welcome to Waverly Middle School, where the students are encouraged to participate in Pride as soon as they walk through the entrance. The lockers are as large as the majority of the population. The teachers create posters that encourage different types of reading, and the students can learn about their teachers just by looking at the signs on the door. More specifically, the kids can learn the teacher's name and ultimately derive where they graduated from based off the symbols representing their college. In a way, this could encourage the kids in the school to try to get to the point where they themselves can be presented as college graduates. Throughout my time at Waverly, I worked with Mrs. Vance in 2 of her 7th grade math classes and her elective course. I helped students work on their homework by answering questions and would try to explain how to do a problem in a different way until the student was able to understand. I began working with 2 students very closely. In order to keep my literacy learners' identity safe, I will be referring to them as students A and B. I'd also like to note that I wrote a lot for this assignment and was unable to fit everything in the digital story, but that it is in the paper version. Student A is a very enthusiastic reader, at least when it comes to reading books on her own time. When she's not in school, she likes to hang out with her friends and cook. When she cooks, sometimes she follows a recipe, sometimes she makes variations on it and does things freely. She likes to read fiction novels whenever she has the time to do so. She believes that reading articles on Facebook can count as reading, but that reading posts made by friends or reading tweets on Twitter does not actually count as reading because there's no real substance behind them. The student also likes to write, but not in the general sense of the term. She likes writing herself to-do lists and lists of ideas. She never writes letters unless prompted, and she does not think that writing posts on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter can be considered writing. Similar to her reasoning for reading, she does not feel that these things generate substance. When asked if she looked up to any person other than her mom, she responded that she looked up to a fictional character named Alex from the show Modern Family. Her reasoning for looking up to this character boiled down to, quote, "She is so smart and knows exactly how to deal with the idiots around her," unquote. I thought this was a great segment into figuring out her in-school literacy habits. The student claimed that she understood the majority of what she learned in English history, but when she struggled in any class, she would reread the question, look around her paper for hints or clues, and if she still had problems, would ask the people around her. She said this was more efficient than waiting for the teacher to get to her to answer her question. She doesn't feel that she has any real difficulties with a particular subject, but within the subject she will have some problems with different topics. She feels that she does the same thing when it comes to a problem with writing. During my interview with her, she claimed that she was a good reader, that she gets good grades, can give explanations of what she does, and understands the problem she is asked to do. She thinks that the biggest problem she has with understanding a question is how it's worded. She mentioned that if a question was written strangely and she had to read it more than 3 times, she would generally just guess the answer. She said it did not read or write for the course if it wasn't required by the teacher, and that she does a lot more reading for math than writing. This is probably due to the fact that the teacher has the students do their homework in a computer program called Digits. Since the coursework does not require them to show their work for credit, the students just guess in their heads or do the problem without actually writing anything down. For this student, I felt that it would have been more beneficial for her to write down the parts to the questions and do the work, because when I watched her take the exams and write along as some of the questions she answered, she seemed to understand them just a little bit better. Looking over her work after doing it with her and a few other students, I saw that instead of just keeping her answers so she could look back at what she did wrong later, she just erased the answers she originally had and put the correct one. I wonder if she would have benefited more if she had kept her original answers in order to review her mistakes before taking the actual test. Since the student only writes out the work for the questions she is confident she can do, I also wonder if she would have been more beneficial for her to write out the work for each question that she was confused about. Opposingly, Student 2 had a review packet that had no work on it at all. When I was working with this student, I was constantly trying to get them to focus on the assignment and try to work the problems. Student is very confusing when it comes to his literacy practices. By my definition of literacy, they understand things, but that does not necessarily mean they do what is expected of them. During my interview with him, I learned that he really enjoys playing basketball. He follows the sport closely, looks up the stats on the players and teams, watches games shown on TV, plays for the school, anything he can do to bring him closer to the sport. I thought this was interesting because when I asked if he reads anything in order to follow it, he claimed he did not. Yet he basically tells me that he does. He explained that if he had to follow the sport, he would probably not enjoy it as much because he does not enjoy reading. I think that he was using the definition of reading as only reading full books, but even then I found it interesting because he explicitly told me that he looked up the information on the players. He also said that he does not enjoy writing. When I asked what he defined writing as, he explained, quote, essays and stuff for language arts class, book reports, science reports, that sort of thing, unquote. It just made it very clear to me that this student had a very different definition of what it meant to write than student A and myself. When I asked him if he had any troubles with reading or writing for school context, he said no again. I wondered if he actually understood what I was asking, so I started asking him what he did when he was confused on his assignment. He told me that he would reread the direction if his mom was pressing for him to finish it, and if that did not help, he would ask his brother. When pressed further, the student explained that his brother had taken all of the same classes before and knows exactly what the teachers expect for the assignments. He does not find himself really struggling with the work, he just feels that he's always bored by it, and is such not motivated to try and figure it out on his own because he doesn't feel it's worth his time. I started talking about this student by mentioning their work that I analyzed. Now I'd like to go into more depth about that. One of the reasons I chose this work to be analyzed since I worked with him and a few others on it and knew how they had gone about solving the problems, and the amount of time it took for them to do so and what they did in regards to the corrections. When I watched them working on the assignments, I found that the student had a hard time staying focused. Every couple of minutes they would try to leave the work area for any reason they could think of. I found it odd that the student did not just try to get through the assignment as soon as possible, but wanted to put it off as long as they could. I think that maybe the student actually might want to learn the information, but they don't see a point in doing so, and they don't want to show their peers that they don't already know the information. I think that the teacher tries to make the classroom environment readily accepting, but that for some students it's a bit more challenging. I think that if she tried relating the information that they are learning to different hobbies, that the students in class would feel more comfortable trying to figure it out in front of their peers. Then the students would not only be trying to learn because they have to, but because it works for something they already like to do. I thought I knew to expect different learning styles and different literacy styles, but I guess it never really clicked in my head that sometimes the students' lack of trying is not always because they don't understand. I also think that by going over the topics in a way that the students can feel more attached to it would make them more willing to answer and ask questions when they are confused, instead of trying to just guess what they're struggling with. I had a lot of fun working with the students in my classroom and learning about the different ways that the students learn through their literacy. The written part of this assignment has more information regarding my observations and review of the work because it was a lot of information. Thank you.